All right, today we are digging into a truly remarkable story. It's all about power, influence, and survival, and it stretches across more than a century. This is the story of one family, the Kovalamadi Kancharla dynasty, and how they absolutely mastered the art of staying relevant through some of the biggest, most seismic shifts in Indian history. I mean, really think about that for a second. Imagine you have all this influence under a colonial government. And then, boom, that empire is gone. The country's independent. The political parties are totally new. The entire rulebook has been thrown out. How do you not only survive something like that, but actually come out on top? And that is the absolute key to this family's entire story. See, they didn't just build bridges out of steel and concrete. They built strategic bridges. Bridges between political eras, between city power and rural power, and even bridges between the world of politics and the silver screen. So let's get into how they did it, starting right at the beginning. You know, every dynasty has a founder, right? An architect who lays that very first stone. Well, for this family, that man was Rao Bahadur Kovalamudi Gopalakrishnaya. He's the one who built the foundation that everything else would stand on. So we're talking about the early 20th century here, a time when India was still under the British Raj. Gopalakrishnaya was a huge player in the Krishna district, which was a really key area in the old Madras presidency. And he wasn't just one thing. He was a master of wearing multiple hats. And back then, you pretty much had to be to thrive. This breakdown really shows you his strategy in action. As a civic administrator, he's shaping local government. As an educational strategist, he's backing institutions like the Andhra Jatiya Kalasala, which was all about mixing modern science with Indian culture. Then, as a political diplomat, he's navigating the super complex world of the Justice Party. And, maybe most importantly, as a community organizer, he built a powerful social base from the ground up. And this organization, this was one of his masterstrokes. The Kama Mahajana Sangam wasn't just some social club. No. It was an engine for modernization. It was specifically designed to take the community's agricultural wealth and convert it into real political power through education and getting people organized. This became the bedrock of his influence inside the Justice Party, which was a huge force for non-Brahmin rights at the time. Okay, so the family is a powerhouse in the pre-independence days. But then, 1947 happens. Independence changes literally everything. The old political parties start to fade away, new ones are rising up. The family had to cross this massive generational and political bridge just to stay in the game. And this slide just illustrates the challenge so perfectly. On the left, you've got the grandfather's world, the Justice Party, operating inside the British system. On the right, the grandson's world, the DMK, a totally dominant force in post-independence Tamil Nadu with its powerful Dravidian ideology. I mean, we are talking about two completely different political universes, so how on earth did they connect them? Well, they had a human bridge, Kancharla Madhava Rao. He was Gopalakrishnaia's grandson, and he became a really trusted lieutenant to C.N. Anadore, the legendary leader of the DMK. He was the perfect person to carry the family's legacy of non-Brahmin advocacy right into the modern era of Dravidian politics. And listen, he wasn't just some figurehead with a famous name. No way. As the DMK's district secretary for Nungabakkam in Chennai, Madhava Rao was right there on the front lines. He was the guy translating the party's big ideas into real action, pushing for better urban development, organizing rationalist ceremonies to promote social equality, and making sure welfare programs like the famous Rupee a Measure rice scheme actually got to the people. He proved the family could still govern, and govern effectively in a brand new world. But political power alone wasn't going to be enough. To truly secure their dynasty for the long haul, the family knew they had to extend their bridges into other powerful areas, social networks, and the booming industry of cinema. Let's see how they expanded their reach. Okay, this was just a genius move. Seriously, the Kancharla brothers already had a strong political base in the city. Then, two of them, Narayana Rao and Madhusudan Rao, go and marry the nieces of N.G. Ranga, an absolute legend known as the father of the Indian peasant movement. Just like that, in one stroke, they merged their urban political clout with a massive rural network of farmers that stretched across multiple districts. They had just built a bridge that spanned the entire social landscape. At the very same time, they were looking at this new medium that was just capturing the hearts and minds of millions of people, Telugu cinema. And they didn't just sit back and watch. They jumped right in and became central players. And they got in early. This timeline shows just how deep their involvement was, right from the late 1940s. Gopala Krishnaiah's son, K. Bhaskar Rao, was already producing films like Drohi back in 1948, and later, the grandsons, Madhava Rao and Narayana Rao, were producing and distributing some of the biggest hits. They were building a cultural empire right alongside their political one. And just look at the kind of impact they had. We're not talking about small, artsy films here. Through their distribution companies, they were essentially the gatekeepers for legendary superstars like NTR and A&R. And these guys, they weren't just actors. They were cultural icons who would later become huge political forces themselves. The family was shaping culture on a massive scale. So when you put it all together, the politics, the community organizing, those brilliant marriages, and the film industry, what do you end up with? You get a dynasty that's not built on a single pillar, but on a whole network of expertly built bridges. That's a legacy that has lasted for over 100 years. This chart really puts their whole strategy into perspective. It was never just about politics. They had a massive stake in the film industry, they continued the social reform work the patriarchs started, and they always kept a strong presence in civic leadership. They diversified their influence, and that's what made their dynasty so incredibly resilient. And that, right there, is the heart of their genius. This family's story is a complete masterclass in adaptation. They took the influence they had built under one system and brilliantly converted it into cultural and economic power that would thrive in a completely new, independent India. This quote, it just captures their entire philosophy perfectly. They understood that real, lasting power wasn't about clinging to the past. It was about constantly building connections to the future, no matter what that future was going to look like. And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The Kovalamudi-Kantrola family built bridges between politics, community, and culture. In our own era of rapid-fire technological, social, and political change, it really makes you wonder, what are the crucial bridges being built right now, and who are the architects building them?